My name's Hank. I'm 48 years old, live in a quiet neighborhood in Missoula, Montana, and up until a few years ago, I thought I knew what family meant. I thought it was about blood, about duty, about showing up even when it's inconvenient. That's what I believed when I stepped in to raise my sister's kids. See, my sister Melanie was never exactly cut out for motherhood. Not in the explosive, tabloid headline kind of way. More like neglect by erosion. Quiet disinterest. Birthday cards she forgot to sign. Parent-teacher conferences she skipped because she was too anxious to deal with judgmental people. I remember once, her daughter Lacey, barely 7 at the time, called me crying because Melanie had left her and her little brother, Ethan, home alone while she ran off with some new guy. No note. No food in the fridge. Just silence and the sound of cartoons playing too loud to distract from the fear. That was the first time I picked them up and let them stay a few days. Those few days turned into weeks, then months. And by the time a year had gone by, Melanie had stopped even pretending she'd come back for them. She called sometimes, usually when she was between relationships or wanted money. She never asked how they were doing, only if they still talked about her. I never asked to be a parent, but life doesn't wait for you to feel ready. I was divorced by then, working construction during the day and doing freelance cabinetry work at night to keep the lights on. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't easy, but I made sure those kids felt safe. That they ate dinner at a table where someone listened. That someone showed up at school concerts and science fairs. That when they cried, someone hugged them like it meant something. Over time, they stopped calling me Uncle Hank and just started calling me home. The years rolled on like that. Lacey started drawing again. Ethan stopped hiding food in his backpack. We built something real. I never adopted them officially. Melanie never signed over custody, but everyone knew where they lived, where they belonged. Even their teachers stopped putting her name on school forms. When Lacey got into the University of Oregon on scholarship, she asked if I'd drive her down there myself. I took time off work and rented a van. We packed her sketchbooks, her thrift store jackets, and a little corkboard full of memories from the house I'd worked myself to the bone keeping. Before she shut the door to her dorm room, she hugged me so tight I thought something in my chest might crack. She didn't say much, just looked at me like she needed me to believe it, that she never would have made it there without me. Ethan followed a few years later, wound up joining the Coast Guard, and now he's stationed out in San Diego, living the kind of structured life he always craved. We talk every Sunday. He says he's saving to buy his first place. Calls me the only reason I know what a real man looks like. And man, if that doesn't punch you right in the heart, I don't know what does. Then, earlier this year, this part still knocks the wind out of me. Both of them surprised me on my birthday. Showed up with this envelope, like something out of a movie. I opened it, expecting maybe a photo or some old memory. What I found was a cashier's check for $80,000. They pulled it together. Said it was a small thank you for everything. Said they knew I'd never ask for anything, but that didn't mean they couldn't give it. I cried, right there in front of both of them. No shame in it. I'd spent half my life wondering if I did enough, if I was enough, if choosing to love someone else's kids like they were my own would ever matter in the long run. It did. It mattered more than I knew. You ever post something online thinking it's just a moment, just a snapshot of gratitude, and then watch it unravel your entire family history in real time? That's what happened to me. A week after the birthday surprise, I posted a short message on Facebook. Nothing flashy, just a photo of the check, with their permission, and a few words about how proud I was of Lacey and Ethan. About how far we'd come. How love doesn't always follow biology. And sometimes, family is chosen in the moments no one else sees. I didn't tag anyone. Didn't call anyone out. Just wrote. They made me feel like I did something right in this life. That post blew up more than I expected. Dozens of people commented. Old coworkers, neighbors, even Lacey's high school art teacher. Everyone saying how beautiful it was, how heartwarming. And yeah, it felt good. After all those years of quietly doing the work, someone finally saw it. People finally saw me. But someone else saw it too. Melanie. I hadn't heard from her in almost 5 years at that point. She stopped calling once Ethan graduated and Lacey moved out. The last text she sent me was a cryptic, "Hope you're not turning them against me," which I never even replied to. I figured we were done. Then out of nowhere, she shows up at my front door. She looked different. A little thinner, a little harder around the edges. The kind of tired that makeup can't fix. She didn't knock. Just stood there waiting, arms crossed like she had every right to barge back into a life she abandoned. She didn't even say hello. Her first words were, "So I guess you think you're some kind of hero now?" I stared at her, stunned. Before I could get a word in, she stormed into the house like she owned the place, waving her phone around like it was a smoking gun. Apparently, someone had sent her a screenshot of my post. And no, she had thoughts. She said I stole her children, that I brainwashed them into thinking she didn't love them, that by accepting their money, I'd basically robbed her of her inheritance, as if parenting had some sort of payout she was entitled to. I told her, calmly, that she had walked away, that no one forced her out, that the kids made their own decisions, and that if she'd been even half the parent she claimed she wanted to be, none of this would have happened. That's when she said it. The thing that really lit the match. That money was supposed to be mine. They wouldn't even have it if it weren't for me giving birth to them. You had no right. I remember laughing. Not out of humor, but out of sheer disbelief. She wasn't furious because she missed them. She was furious because they gave me a thank you she thought she deserved by default. That money wasn't a gift to her. It was proof they saw me as their real family. She didn't want them back. She just wanted the credit. I thought that would be the end of it. That she'd blow up, storm out, and disappear for another 5 years. But Melanie always had this need to win arguments retroactively. If she couldn't win in the moment, she'd rewrite the narrative until she came out the victim, and this time, she didn't just rewrite it. She published it. The next day, my cousin Lisa called. I hadn't spoken to her in over a year. We were never especially close, but we got along. She asked, cautiously, if I'd seen what Melanie posted. I hadn't. I don't follow Melanie on anything. But when I looked, there it was, a long, breathless post on Facebook. Paragraphs of fiction wrapped in just enough truth to make it dangerous. She said I had manipulated her during a vulnerable period of her life, that I turned her children against her with lies, and that I accepted thousands of dollars from them under false pretenses. Then came the line that really made my stomach twist. He always wanted to be the savior, but he's just a greedy old man who saw 2 kids and a paycheck. People started reaching out. Some with support, some not. My aunt commented, "This is heartbreaking. Family should never turn on family." A former neighbor chimed in with, "I always thought it was strange how quickly you took over. Something didn't sit right." Someone else, a second cousin I barely knew, reposted Melanie's story with a caption, "Always trust a mother's instincts." It felt like someone flipped the lights on during a private moment and invited the entire town to point and judge. And I know, people will say to ignore it, to not give it power. But when you spend nearly a decade raising kids you didn't bring into this world, when you pour every ounce of yourself into their healing, their success, their lives, and someone tries to twist that into theft, you don't just shake that off. Even Lacey and Ethan saw it. They both called me that night. Lacey was furious. She wanted to post screenshots, bank records, even photos of Melanie's old text messages begging for space and freedom. Ethan asked if I wanted him to fly back just to have a word with her. I told them no. We weren't going to fight her with noise. That's her language, not ours. But that didn't stop the ripple. Here's the thing about families. They don't always divide neatly. There's no clean line where love ends and loyalty begins. What happened next didn't feel like a war. It felt like slow rot. Like watching the floorboards creak and not knowing which one's going to give out under your weight. Some folks stayed quiet. Those were the ones I respected the most, honestly. They didn't rush to defend me or condemn her. They just stayed out of the mess. But others? Others picked sides like it was a game. Like my life, my fatherhood, was some moral debate they got to score from the bleachers. I got a message from my Uncle Don, someone I hadn't spoken to since the last family funeral. He said he always thought I meant well, but that raising another person's children comes with boundaries, and that maybe the kids felt obligated to pay me back because I made them feel indebted. His words, not mine. Then there was my cousin Trish, who commented on Melanie's post saying, "Money changes people. And some people just know how to play the long game." Play the long game? Is that what they thought this was? Some slow con I started when Ethan was 8 and afraid to sleep alone? The worst part wasn't even the accusations. It was the way people started treating Lacey and Ethan. Like they were brainwashed. Like their gratitude couldn't possibly be real unless it came with strings. One of Lacey's former teachers, someone she used to admire, even asked her if she'd been pressured into cutting out her mother. Ethan texted me the next morning. Why do people believe her? Why do they think this is about money when all she ever gave us was silence? I didn't have an answer. Because it's easier to believe the mother in the story. Easier to believe the blood. The biology. The image of a mother we all want to cling to, the one who tries her best, who's just misunderstood. No one wants to believe the alternative. That sometimes mothers walk away. That sometimes the person who stays, who cooks the meals, dries the tears, teaches them how to drive and how to grieve, isn't the one who gave them life, but the one who gave them everything else. And yet, through all of it, I stayed quiet. I didn't post a rebuttal. Didn't dig through old messages to prove anything. I thought, maybe this would burn out on its own. that people would see the truth in time. But silence has a weight. And Melanie, she knew how to fill that silence with poison. I wasn't even supposed to be there. It was Aunt Marie's 70th birthday, one of those big catered backyard things with folding chairs, string lights, and a cake the size of a Buick. I'd already made peace with not going. I figured, no matter how much I loved her, I wasn't about to step into a family reunion where half the guests thought I'd swindled my niece and nephew into cutting ties with their birth mother. But Aunt Marie called me herself, said she didn't care about what people are saying online, and that if I didn't come, she would be the one disappointed. And maybe that got to me more than I'd like to admit. So I went. I dressed nice, brought a gift, stayed near the edge of the crowd like a man hovering too close to the fire, just waiting to get burned. And for a little while, it was fine. A few polite smiles. A couple of awkward nods. One hug that lingered too long from a cousin who whispered, "I believe you," like it was a confession. Then Melanie showed up. I didn't even see her at first. I was talking to one of the kids helping serve lemonade when I heard my name, said like a punchline. And when I turned, there she was, drink in hand, makeup too sharp, smile too wide. She was holding court. That's the only way to describe it. Talking loudly, laughing louder. Her voice carried, every syllable soaked in that passive-aggressive syrup she'd mastered over the years. And then she made her move. She tapped her glass like someone about to make a toast and said, "Since we're all here, including the man who apparently thinks my children are his, I think it's time we cleared the air." I could feel every head turn toward me. My pulse thudded behind my ears. She didn't stop. She went on about how hard it is to be a mother, how people love to swoop in and pretend they know better, how some people manipulate teenagers into seeing the worst in others just so they can play the hero. And then, with one hand raised like she was delivering scripture, she said, "It takes a lot of nerve to pretend you're a parent when you didn't suffer through the labor, the diapers, the nights wondering if they'd survive." I didn't say a word, didn't flinch, didn't move. And yet, somehow, I was the one making a scene, because that's how these things work. She brought the drama, but all eyes were on me, waiting to see if I'd explode, if I'd fight back, if I'd finally drop the mask of the kind, stable uncle and show the greed she'd accused me of. But I didn't give her that. I simply stood, looked her in the eye, and said, "I'm sorry you're still grieving the children you walked away from." Then I left, not in a rage, not with a grand speech, just with my head high, because I wasn't going to entertain a circus. I didn't ask her to do it. Lacey made that choice on her own. 3 days after the party, I got a text from her. No words, just a screenshot of a draft post. Long, angry, raw. She'd written it the night I left Aunt Marie's backyard. Said it took everything in her not to post it right then and there, but she wanted to sleep on it. Think it through. Make sure it wasn't coming from impulse but from clarity. I read every word twice. Then a third time. It was like watching her grow up all over again. Every paragraph sharper, more confident, more hers. She titled it, "To the woman who gave birth to me, and the man who raised me." In the post, she didn't hold back. She wrote about the night she cried herself to sleep because Melanie forgot to pick her up from school. About the day she watched her little brother pack a bag with crackers and a flashlight because he was afraid they'd be left alone again. About the birthdays where the only person who showed up with a gift was me. About the way I never once asked for anything, but somehow gave them everything. She wrote, "Blood might make you a mother, but it doesn't make you a parent." And then, the part that broke me wide open. "Uncle Hank is the reason I graduated, the reason I survived. If you're uncomfortable with us thanking the person who kept us alive, that's your problem, not ours." She posted it publicly, with her full name, her face, her story. And for the first time, it wasn't me who had to defend the truth. It was her, on her own terms. The backlash was immediate, not against her, but against Melanie. People started retracting their support, deleting their comments. My cousin Trish posted some half-baked apology, saying she didn't know the full story. A couple of those second cousins went radio silent. Even Aunt Donna messaged me privately to say she'd been wrong. But I didn't care about vindication. Not really. What got me was seeing Lacey, the girl who once asked me if love was something you had to earn, finally standing in her own power, saying, "I know who was there for me. I don't need to justify it anymore." I didn't respond to her post. Didn't comment. Didn't share it. I didn't need to. She said everything I never could. I should have known she wouldn't go quietly. Melanie never did know how to lose with grace. She didn't even know how to lose, not in her mind. She just recalculated, rewrote, reloaded. So after Lacey's post, after the support started shifting, Melanie didn't back off. She doubled down. It started small. A new post, vague but pointed, something about grown children being weaponized by manipulators and people clinging to children they never birthed because they need validation. That post didn't land the way she wanted. Too many people saw through it. Too many had read Lacey's words and believed her. So then came the escalation. 3 weeks later, I got served. Not figuratively. Literally. A knock on the door. Manila envelope. Civil summons. Melanie was suing me. The claim? Emotional distress, coercion of minors, and unlawful retention of funds. She wanted the $80,000 returned. Claimed it was hers by proxy of parental inheritance and that I had unduly influenced her children to financially and emotionally sever ties with their biological parent. I sat there at the kitchen table, papers in hand, thinking this can't be real. But it was. And you know what the wildest part is? She didn't even want the money. Not really. Because if she had, she would have contacted a lawyer months ago. She would have tried mediation. She would have sent a letter. But no, this wasn't about funds. This was about power. She couldn't stand the idea that she had no say anymore. That her kids, her grown, successful kids, had cut the cord for good and chosen me instead. This was her last swing. And it hurt. Not because I thought she'd win. My lawyer took one look at the papers and said it was nonsense. But because now it wasn't just gossip or social media slander. Now it was official. Now I was going to court, standing in front of strangers, having to explain why I wasn't a villain in my own damn life. Lacey offered to testify. Ethan too. They were furious. But what cut deepest? Melanie included old photos in the evidence packet. Pictures of the kids when they were little, asleep in her lap, smiling on a swing set. As if that somehow proved she deserved something. As if a photograph could undo the years of absence that followed. I looked at those photos and felt nothing. Not anger. Not grief. Just finality. She wasn't trying to win her children back. She was trying to win the story. But I already knew how it ended. Court day didn't feel like justice. It felt like walking into a room where strangers got to dissect the most intimate parts of your life and then decide who was telling the better story. That's what court is, sometimes not truth, but narrative. I remember sitting there in that stiff wooden chair, hands folded, trying to look composed while every nerve in my body wanted to bolt out the nearest exit. Melanie sat across the aisle, surrounded by a lawyer she probably couldn't afford without someone else footing the bill, wearing a blouse she clearly thought made her look like the wrong party. She looked rehearsed. That's what hit me most. Her sadness, her tremble, her pauses, all of it practiced like she was auditioning for sympathy. Her lawyer started with this long statement about maternal sacrifice, about how Melanie had struggled as a single mother, how she'd been cut off from her children without consent, how Mr. Randall, they wouldn't even call me Hank, had assumed a parental role for personal gratification. Personal gratification. I nearly laughed, but I didn't. I just sat there and let him spin the web. And then it was our turn. My lawyer didn't go theatrical. He didn't need to. We had receipts, records, statements from the school, letters from social workers who remembered the early days, texts from Melanie herself, begging for a little more time to get herself together. Her old landlord had even submitted a sworn statement about how she abandoned the apartment with the kids still listed on the lease. But none of that hit as hard as what came next. Lacey walked in. She was calm, clear-eyed, not angry, not visibly, but solid. She was everything Melanie wasn't. And when she took the stand and spoke about how she and Ethan had chosen to live with me, how I never asked for money, how they insisted on giving that gift after years of independence and success, the room shifted. Even the judge leaned forward. She ended her statement by saying, "The only thing Mr. Randall ever stole from our mother was her chance to abandon us without consequence." There was silence. Thick, whole room silence. Melanie wouldn't even look at her. The ruling didn't take long. The judge called the lawsuit frivolous, manipulative, and deeply concerning. He dismissed the case entirely and warned Melanie, on the record, that pursuing this further could result in legal consequences of her own. She stormed out, not crying, seething. I stayed seated until the room emptied. My hands were still shaking, even though we'd won. Because the truth? Winning doesn't always feel good. Sometimes it feels like surviving a storm you never asked to be caught in. But it was over. Or so I thought. In the days after court, there was a kind of quiet I hadn't felt in years. Not peace, not yet. But stillness. Like the dust had settled but hadn't been swept up just yet. Lacey went back to Portland. Ethan called from the base in San Diego just to say, "I'm proud of you, old man." I smiled, told him I was proud of him too, and hung up before either of us got too sentimental. That's the thing about raising kids. Even ones you didn't plan for, they never really stop being yours, even when they're grown and gone. I went back to work. Sanded down a cedar plank for a cabinet job. Took extra care with the finish. That's how I deal with things. Keep my hands busy until my mind catches up. Then came the message. Private number. No name. Just, you think you won. You haven't. I still have my name. I'm still their mother. I stared at the screen for a long time. Not because I was afraid, not anymore, but because it finally clicked. That was it. That was all she had left. Her name. The biology. The title. Not the memories. Not the dinners, the homework help, the hand held at doctor's appointments. Just a word she clung to like it proved something. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Instead, I walked out back and sat on the old porch swing Ethan helped me rehang last summer. The evening was cool. Montana sky stretching wide overhead. A few stars had already blinked on, like the world was slowly remembering itself. That's when I noticed something in the mailbox, a small envelope, handwritten. No return address. Inside was a photo. It was the three of us. Me, Lacey, and Ethan. Taken on my birthday. I hadn't even realized anyone snapped it. We were sitting around the kitchen table, all laughing. No one posing. No one trying. Just being. And on the back, in Lacey's handwriting, were 6 words. This is the family I chose. I stared at that photo until my eyes blurred. I didn't cry. Not this time. Not because I wasn't moved, but because for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I had to prove anything to anyone. I already had everything I needed.